Welcome to Experts Talk, the podcast series by the Italian Chamber of Commerce in Vietnam that explores the key issues shaping Vietnam's role in today's global business landscape. In this sixth episode, we are delighted to welcome Mr. Federico Vasoli, cross-jurisdiction lawyer admitted to the Bar of Milan, managing partner of dMTV Global, and vice chairman of ICHAM Vietnam. With over 2 decades of experience in international business law, foreign direct investment, taxation, blockchain, and the digital economy, he combines practice with academia as a lecturer at MIP Politecnico di Milano and Universidad Católica del Sacro Cuore, as well as a frequent speaker at international MBA and executive programs. This episode explores certificates of origin, CO, and rules of origin, ROO, under the EU-Vietnam Free Trade Agreement, EVFTA. Since 2020, trade between Vietnam and the EU has grown to almost 60 billion euro, with Italy-Vietnam trade reaching 6.3 billion euro in 2024. Mr. Vasoli explains why understanding and applying ROO is crucial for companies to enjoy tariff cuts and smoother customs. Through real examples in coffee, garments, machinery, seafood, and electronics, he highlights both the opportunities and common challenges, showing how strong compliance can turn into a competitive edge in the EU market. Stay tuned as we continue to unpack complex global dynamics with those who understand them best. Enjoy the episode.
Today's episode will focus on 2 pillars of international trade law: certificates of origin and rules of origin, which are critical for every company wishing to fully utilize the benefits of the EU-Vietnam Free Trade Agreement, or EVFTA. Essentially, they apply to all those of you that sell products from Italy or the European Union and into Vietnam and the other way around. The EVFTA entered into force in August 2020 and rapidly transformed the commercial relationship between Vietnam and the European Union, as you know. Bilateral trade reached nearly 60 billion euros after 5 years, making Vietnam the EU's top ASEAN trading partner and the EU-Vietnam's 3rd largest export market. Both imports and exports have surged nearly 50%, with Vietnam maintaining a robust trade surplus. Italy's share in this expansion is significant. Italy-Vietnam trade grew by 49% since 2020, reaching 6.3 billion euros in 2024. Vietnam exports are diverse and include iron and steel, electronics, machinery, coffee, textiles, footwear, plastics, and seafood. On the other hand, Italy exports premium machinery, luxury fashion, food processing equipment, and agricultural products. Such dynamic growth, which is due, thankfully, to the implementation of the EU-Vietnam Free Trade Agreement, shows the ongoing integration of the 2 economies and their potential. Yet the true advantage is found not just in increased trade figures, but in maximizing the preferential tariffs, streamlined processes, and improved access to the EU market provided by the EVFTA itself. The gateway to these benefits lies in mastering and complying with rules and certificates of origin. So what are rules of origin? Rules of origin are the backbone of every preferential trade agreement, including the EVFTA. They are a set of legal criteria that determine the economic nationality, so to say, of goods. That is, the country that confers origin and therefore eligibility for tariff preferences and trade benefits. There are various types of rules of origin. You have simple rules of origin. These are easy. They apply to wholly obtained goods produced from start to finish in one country. Think about Vietnamese rice, Italian wine, Vietnamese harvested coffee, or Italian marble. For these products, origin is generally clear. Then you have complex rules of origin, which apply to goods manufactured using imported inputs, which is normally the case. Here, origin is determined by more detailed criteria. You have change in tariff classification, or CTC. The final product must be classified under a different HS code than its foreign inputs. Then you have value limitation, regional value content, non-originating materials, so materials that don't come from one specific country, must not exceed a certain percentage of the product's ex-works value. We will see that in a moment when we talk about textile. Then have specific processing or product-specific rules. Some products, again, we'll see it in textile, must undergo defined manufacturing steps. Same with electronics, by the way. Then you have cumulation provisions. The EVFTA allows cumulation of origin for certain inputs from the EU and Korea also, which is helpful for Italian firms manufacturing in Vietnam with European or Korean materials. The practical outcome? Only products that meet these rules are originating and eligible, therefore, for the lower tariffs and expedited access that the EVFTA provides. We've talked about rules of origin. What are certificates of origin? Well, certificates of origin are the official document. So the rules are the legal criteria, and the certificates of origin are the official documents that certify that goods meet the rules themselves and are therefore entitled to preferential access. These certificates are essential to international trade, of course. They are required for customs clearance and for claiming preferential tariffs under agreements like the EVFTA. Again, you have different types of certificates of origin. Essentially, you have two. One is certificate of origins for wholly obtained goods. For products with clear single country origin, the certificate application is quite straightforward. Required documents typically include the invoice, packing list, harvest certificate, or manufacturing proof. However, in practice, obtaining a certificate of origin for wholly obtained goods can be more challenging than it appears. Issuing authorities sometimes or often conduct thorough checks and require comprehensive documentation for every input. For example, to obtain a certificate of origin for poultry products, you must provide records covering the entire supply chain, from the breeding farm and slaughterhouse to the processing facility. Then you have certificates of origin for non-wholly obtained goods. In these cases, exporters must supply detailed production records, supplier declarations, calculation of value-added thresholds, and proof of qualifying processing steps. These certificates often require more extensive scrutiny and record keeping. Who are the issuing authorities? In Vietnam, it is the Ministry of Industry and Trade, whilst in the EU and Italy, you have either a self-declaration via the Registered Exporter System, or REX, for shipments above 6,000 euros, or invoice declarations for lower value shipments. Vietnam has issued numerous legal documents covering rules and certificates of origin, including but not limited to the following pieces of legislation. Decree 31 of 2018, Circular 5 of 2018, Circular 44 of 2023, and Circular 11 of 2024. Customs authorities are, in any case, continuously adapting and updating procedures to combat fraud and ensure effective supervision. For instance, recently a decision 467 of 2025, tightened the inspection of certificates of origins and origin declarations. Let me give you some practical examples. For instance, coffee export from Vietnam, simple case. Rule of origin: coffee beans are grown, processed, and packaged in Vietnam, and therefore the product is wholly obtained in Vietnam. The certificate of origin works as follows. The exporter of Vietnamese coffee submits invoice, packing list, and manufacturing proof, applies for Form EUR1 with the Ministry of Industry and Trade in accordance with Circular 5 of 2018. Custom clearance is routine and preferential tariffs are applied. Example 2, this is more complex. Garment export from Vietnam. The rule of origin states that garments made using imported fabric qualify for preferences only if the fabric is woven, cut and sewn in Vietnam, the European Union, or Korea. Chinese origin fabric disqualifies the product. Remember when I talked about different rules. Therefore, the certificate of origin requires an application that includes, again, the supplier invoice, but also full documentation of all production steps, evidence of local processing, and calculation of permissible foreign input percentage. Another complex example, Italian machinery export to Vietnam. Rule of origin: the Italian machines assembled mostly with EU components comply. Machines with non-EU parts must show sufficient transformation that non-EU parts do not exceed value thresholds. Certificates of origin: exporters self-certify with REX for large shipments, provide manufacturing records, bills of material, and supplier information. Customs may audit origin claims. Another example, mixed seafood export from Vietnam. Vietnamese company process seafood using local and ASEAN fish. Under the EVFTA's cumulation provision in Protocol 1 concerning rules of origin, fish from ASEAN countries may qualify as Vietnamese origin when substantially transformed in Vietnam according to the specific processing requirements. Example 5, electronics exports. I mentioned electronics before. Assembled electronics with many foreign components require careful calculation of value, proper record keeping, and transparent documentation. A single error can result in customers rejecting the preferential status. Another example, and then we'll go to customs control and mistakes to avoid. Italian textile investment in Vietnam. This is quite relevant. Italian investors develop a local textile production, ensuring qualifying origin for the EVFTA advantages. Strategic supply chain partnerships with the EU and Vietnamese input suppliers maximize eligibility. So again, you make sure that you don't have products, for instance, textiles coming from China, to avoid being ruled out of the certificates of the preferential treatments. So let's talk about customs control and mistakes. Custom verifications and control conducted by Vietnamese customs authorities have advanced control and risk management procedures. Under Decision 467 of 2025, which I quoted before, customs officers shall verify all aspects of certificates of origin in accordance with Article 28 of Decree number 31 of 2018, including document verification against electronic databases, and may suspend clearance or conduct physical inspection of goods where discrepancies are identified. If there are concerns about the certificate of origin, particularly for export products claimed to be made in Vietnam, which is a big topic in this historical context, authorities may even request inspections of the manufacturer's facilities. This has become more common, as I mentioned, due to increased instances of Chinese companies using Vietnam as a transshipment point to circumvent trade restrictions. What are the typical mistakes based on our experience? Typically incomplete or inaccurate certificate of origin documentation, failure to update supplier declarations or production records, mislabeling goods or improper production classification, failure to account for insufficient processing operations as defined in Article 6 of Protocol 1 of the EVFTA and Article 5 of Circular 11 of 2024. Operations such as packaging, bottling, simple assembly, or mixing do not confer originating status. These mistakes often mean loss of tariff preferences, fines even, shipment delays, of course, and reputational harm. For complex products, businesses may seek an advanced ruling from customs to confirm the origin status before shipping. This is quite relevant to keep in mind. If customs disputes a certificate, exporters should be prepared to provide all underlying documents and, if necessary, appeal decisions through administrative review or regulatory channels. The EVFTA brings phased removal of 99% tariffs across key sectors. For instance, with regard to textiles and garments, 99% phased out in 7 years. Machinery and electronics, immediate or rapid tariff elimination benefits both Italian and Vietnamese manufacturers. Agriculture and seafood, there is bustling growth when it comes to the sector, but EU standards are evidently quite strict, especially when they apply to sustainability, labeling, and food safety. Food processing luxury products. Now, Italian wines, cheeses, and gourmet food have cheaper access, which is quite good news for the opening of the Vietnamese burgeoning middle class market. Let's mention a few success stories. First story, an Italian fashion brand that partnered with Vietnamese producers to supply EU markets. They integrate supply chains, invest in local weaving, and offer technical training to meet stringent rules of origin. The result is tariff-free exports and growing market share. Second example, high added value machinery. Italian machinery suppliers leverage EVFTA tariffs eliminations offer advanced equipment, and partner with local businesses. They use the REC system and share expertise in fulfilling complex origin documentation. Challenging. Failure to update labeling and product classification per the latest rules results in customs rejections. Even the use of an unofficial country abbreviation, for instance, VN instead of Vietnam, may trigger disputes. We have seen that. Or also when it comes to agricultural exports, Vietnamese exporters struggle with compliance on residue levels, packaging, environmental standards, and traceability. Italian advisors increasingly help local firms navigate these complexities for successful exports. Another challenge that we've seen is related to seafood and ethical compliance. Strict anti-IUU, illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing controls from the EU mean that Vietnamese exporters have to modernize traceability systems and seek clarification. Some Italian logistics and technology firms offer these solutions, but we do appreciate that this is quite challenging. Maximizing opportunities for exporters. Audit all supply chains. Ensure that every input, process, and supplier meets rules of origin standards. Maintain robust documentation. Diligence is key. Keep supplier records, contracts, process logs, and all supporting evidence up to date. I know that this can be a bit challenging, especially in a world with instant messaging and AI, but it is important to keep records. Invest in compliance. Regular staff training, expert legal review, and internal audits to preempt customs disputes is quite helpful. Leverage accumulation. Build supply chains with eligible partners in Vietnam, the EU, and other countries such as South Korea to maximize origin eligibility. I'm mentioning South Korea because the European Union has a similar free trade agreement with that jurisdiction. Utilize electronic systems. Vietnam is digitizing its customs and origin management. This is quite useful. And prepare for verification. Expect strict customs checks and be ready to demonstrate production processes and origin at every point. Parties must also comply with environmental and social standards under the EVFTA, the Vietnamese Labor Code of 2019, and the Law on Environmental Protection of 2020. Adherence to the EU sustainability requirements, Vietnamese labor laws, and traceability standards is mandatory for maintaining export privileges and business reputation in accordance with both Vietnamese law and ESG principles. So in conclusion, certificates of origin and rules of origin constitute legally binding documentation which is essential for trade compliance and competitive advantage. The complexities of origin criteria, ever-evolving regulations, and modern customs verification require diligence, investment, and deep expertise. Italian and Vietnamese businesses who do master these details maximize their access to the EVFTA's benefits, lower costs, and unlock new markets. Subject to compliance with Vietnamese laws and regulation, including the Law on Investments of 2020 and the Law on Enterprises of 2020, Italian enterprises operating in Vietnam shall maintain ongoing regulatory compliance while pursuing sustainable growth and trade leadership. The Italian Chamber of Commerce in Vietnam, ICHAM, operating in accordance with Vietnamese laws, will provide support within the scope permitted by applicable regulations. Thank you very much.